Hey everyone, Felipe Castelo Branco here again, with another video. Today we have another guest, Mariana Pires, the pharmacist. Yeah, Mariana Pires from way back. I even feel a bit weird, because I've known Mari since she was a little girl, since she was just a kid. Now I feel old looking at her. A pharmacist who's been at tequila for years and years and years, right? So, just like her, right? She has that background, right? A pharmacist and all that. She's been one of our researchers at Tequila for several years, one of the pioneers of MDPL, right? We did it, didn't we? Mari even managed to find a photo of the very first, let's say, test, right, Mari? The draft of MDPL on that tiny soccer field behind Ewander's house, our president on the farm. Mariana was there. I was there. Little Rafa was in the photo. Gustavo Guerra. There were a few people there, right? Larissa was there, Kaltzman too.
Larissa. And by chance our judge was there.
Adriana, the future judge, right, of the games.
Yeah.
So it all started there, right? So I took advantage, since Mariana is also active. She's on the Dakila women's soccer team. She participates. She has a really strong presence in that area, I said. Mariana, let's make the video then. Let's explain things to everyone. Let's try to share the information we have with people. Even just talking a little before we started the video, right? She was saying, wow, it's good for us to have this experience so we can explain it. Because tequila is the opposite, right, Mari? Go ahead.
And it's not just for MDPL, but all our training sessions in tequila are like that, right? We get some guidance and then we go and execute it right in the best way possible, as quickly as possible. We just go and do it. And a lot of times we don't even know why we're doing it, right? Many times it's even so we don't sabotage the experience we need to go through, right?
And to avoid creating expectations, right, Mari?
Exactly. And that's how it was with MDPL, right? So I remember. Well, actually, I don't even remember what I was doing that day on the farm, because it was probably outside, some field activity, right? And then we were just messing around there. And I don't even know if we can call that a field, you know, Felipe, because it was like one of the worst lawns. There was no goalie, nothing, right? So it was, but it was really cool and it was memorable, you know? When I stopped to think about MDPL, talk about MDPL, I said, guys, that day. And that was where it all started.
And you even found the photo, guys. I had even forgotten about that picture. Really cool. I'm going to put it here for you guys. I'll add some visuals, right? To everything we're going to talk about. Okay? You know we always record these conversations. Then there's the editing. And I always add visuals, right? So you can follow along visually and understand a bit better. Isn't that right? So let's go, Mari. So, how are we going to start? How do you want to start?
Look, we can start today with the theoretical part, because we've already gone through the experience. It's been over 10 years now. So today I can discuss the theory, then tell a bit of the story about how the experience was, because at Tequila, we go through the experience first, and then comes the theory. More than 10 years, so we've already got a bit of experience. Some pieces we can put together and talk a little about the technical side, right? The technology that is MDPL, right?
Exactly. A gift from our partners. It's part of it. It's a very important part of our training.
Yeah, so when we talk about MDPL, we're talking about 4 fundam, 13 fundamentals of nature, right? Which are magnetism, density, and pressure, well known by science, and light, right? Both as a wave and as a particle, right? So, yeah, this is a technology that comes to us through photonic particles, and since we're talking about the fundamentals of nature, I'll also mention 3 others, which are the positive, negative, and neutral modulating waves, which as fundamentals of nature are also related to MDPL, right? So, these fundamentals, right, that we refer to as MDPL, this set of forces of fundamentals, they're capable of working on us physically, intellectually, and they also stir up the depths of our consciousness, right? For what purpose? To transform us into superhumans. That's the path we're on. And since it amplifies everything in us, we have to make the most of it, including our human ability to think, to reason, and use that to always keep our thoughts focused, directed, and most importantly, positive, right? Which is something that's hard these days, right? Everyone always tends to focus on the negative, and we have to focus on the positive in our daily lives, especially under the influence of MDPL, where everything is amplified, right? We experience changes in our electromagnetic field, and that brings about changes throughout our whole body, so I'm going to explain a little bit about that. But before that, I'd like to mention that NDPL was used by various civilizations in the past through what we now know is a technology, the moon, right? We know that these peoples had games or sometimes rituals that they performed under the light of the moon. So, ancient wisdom was already about taking advantage of nature or supposed nature, right?
Exactly.
And also making a connection, right, between the moon, light, and MDPL. We say that when women are going to have children, we say she's going to give birth. Literally, she's going to give light.
To the light.
Right? Which is also connected to the idea of modulating waves, positive, negative, and neutral, which are the energies of creation. So it's all connected, right?
So MDPL today is like an MDPL 2.0, let's say. It's a technology from our partners, isn't it? Which is used through the biosatellite.
Exactly, and it will be available to us until 2050. And today it's a huge advantage because we can use this technology at any time of day, right? It's not just at night when we have the moonlight shining down on us, right? So that's what happens when we're at our soccer games, right? Our little soccer game isn't just a little soccer game, is it, Felipe? There's a whole bunch of technology involved there, right?
Exactly. This biosatellite, folks, is let's say, it's a satellite of the 49 races, really big, and it's actually positioned at about 23 degrees of elevation in a certain direction, right? And it emits this light, right? And it changes in the area where it's, let's say, set to be, where this light is focused, it alters the MDPL, the magnetism, the density, the pressure, and the light of the area where it was agreed to have the MDPL. In Dakila, every day, right? It's pretty much constant, the MDPL. But the MDPL in other places where there are associates, right? There are plazas and parks here in Campo Grande, for example, and Parque dos Poderes, you know? There are other plazas. There's that Orla Morena, right? There are days for all of them. Later on we can even put together a table, maybe, for people to see. There are in Sao Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, several cities, Porto Alegre, lots of cities in Brazil and around the world, folks. Several cities in Portugal, several cities in the United States. There's Los Angeles, Miami, in Alabama, in Huntsville. There's New York in Central Park. On Sundays, it's MDPL in New York. All because of our centers, our associates spread around the world. There are in France, in Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, Elche, so many places. In Argentina, in Paraguay, in Bolivia, it's spread all over, folks. Thousands of people benefit from this technology.
Exactly. That's the advantage of having it today through the biosatellite, right? We can direct it selectively to certain moments, certain places. So this is wonderful for us, even for the broadcasts too, right? When we have activities where TVCH does the broadcasts, we also absorb the NDPL. When we're doing our training sessions, there's even selective MDPL, which organizes our brain waves, you know. So that also makes the learning process easier. So sometimes when we're giving a lecture, a training, studying, or something like that, there's also this MDPL to work on the intellectual side.
So, Mari, there are a lot of people here who are lay people, who don't really understand. So, in the broadcasts, TVCH is a TV channel within the Dakila ecosystem that broadcasts our soccer games at the farm during our training sessions and during the filming, right? They broadcast it on YouTube, on their YouTube channels. We'll leave all the TDCH channels here in the description. When they broadcast the soccer games at Dakila, people receive this frequency through, let's say, the internet, right? Isn't that it? They receive.
It's an electromagnetic wave. We work with light, so it's something that can be transmitted. Yes, of course, it's a slightly lower percentage, right? Today we're at 510% MDPL when we're on the field, right? But when there are these places, like scheduled plazas, it seems like it's 300%. TV broadcast transmission is a little lower too, not 510.
But it's always good, right? You sit down, eat some popcorn.
Yeah.
You just soak it all in, folks.
Actually, that's one of the goals of MDPL, right? To bring joy to people, to bring people together, whenever you can. We have stories from people, people close to us who say, "Oh, you guys didn't play, whatever, I was here watching, hanging out with friends." So it's really a positive moment for people. In fact, our friends and partners have already said that we've saved a lot of lives for this reason, because people were in a positive vibe, the highest frequency in the universe, which is joy. So, a lot of lives are saved this way, right? When we're doing something positive.
And the benefits, right? Of soaking it all in, In your body, your whole biochemical process, your immunity, your brain activity, right? And all of that gets better, doesn't it? It's a very important tool for our training.
So guys, I'm here with my dear friend Otadio. We're here at the Dakila headquarters during the MDPL. You've been doing the MDPL for several years now, right, Otavio?
Yes.
So what did you feel?
There's something that's noticeable 100% of the time, for me. If I'm at the gym, at home, working out with a certain weight, I can come here and spend 20 days doing MDPL, meaning not lifting any weights at all during those 20 days, just playing soccer, and when I get back, my body is more resilient and I can even increase the weights.
Yeah.
In other words, working your muscles here warps your tissues and your structure in such a way that when you go back, you're more resilient than when you arrived. And that's really noticeable.
That's the physical MDPL. And then there's the MDPL.
Yeah, the selective one.
Selective, which works on our brain activity.
Exactly, by equalizing brain waves, it affects our understanding. Right, so your cognitive functions become sharper, your perception of things too, and you'll even notice that during the game. There's the part that works on your physical side, but also your reasoning and perception during the game.
That's one of the reasons why there are a lot of people who ask, "But you have to play soccer?" No, you don't. It's not about soccer, right? Explain that.
Yeah, it's not that you have to play soccer. People here in the stands are also getting something out of it.
And you at home, watching?
And you at home too. But when you're sweating, the more you sweat, the more you push yourself, your effort multiplies the benefits you're already getting.
Exactly. That's it, folks. MDPL is an amazing technology from our partners. It's not MDPL, it's magnetism, pressure density, and light, which come through a light emitted by the famous biosatellite from our partners, and it's really fantastic. And you at home, the percentage went up, right, of people watching?
It went up for everyone. I know that here it's now 510, but I don't know what the number is for those at home.
Yes.
But it went up for everyone, and later it will be broadcast in the cities too, just like the MDPL in the cities that already have it.
That's right, folks. Let's go to MDPL.
Yeah, I can even explain a little, get a bit into the more technical side, but I'll try to use simple language so we can kind of visualize how it all works, right? MDPL, first of all, it's like it gives our body a good cleaning, to get rid of toxins, whether from food, chemicals, or a bunch of other things we know are out there, right? It adjusts our biorhythm, right, by regulating our hormones, and it also affects the electrical impulses in our cells, the cellular electrical charge.
That's extremely important.
And also, it works on a super valuable organelle, which is the mitochondria, right? Nowadays, we know there are already a lot of studies out there talking about it. So, we don't really need to dive deep into human physiology and biochemistry, right, even though I'm passionate about it. Because when you think about creation, how a human being was made with so much complexity, with such perfection, even today, with all the technology and science we have, we don't understand 100%. We don't even know 100% of our own bodies.
We're still far from that, right, Mari?
Yeah, we're still far, still far. But, you see, our body works through messages. So, these messages need to go from cell to another cell, and then another. So, this message, this nerve impulse, it goes from neuron to neuron, which are cells of the nervous system, as well as from neurons to, for example, a muscle cell, right? Like, let's say I want to raise my arm. For me to raise my arm, a command comes from my brain, right, from the nervous part to the muscular part, so I can contract and lift my arm.
Aha!
So it's something really complex. It involves a lot of reactions, a lot of molecules. And actually, there are ions involved, right, which are atoms with positive or negative charges, you know. It's really about electric charge, talking about atoms, protons, and electrons.
Yes.
And also molecules with charges. So, for example, when you have a neuron, when a message is being transmitted, the nerve impulse, there's an exchange of ions on the surface, on the membrane of the neuron. So there's an internal charge and an external charge. So what happens is a polarization of the membrane, depolarization, polarization, depolarization, and that's how the impulse travels between the cells and between the neurons, right, through ions and also neurotransmitters. We've all heard a lot about serotonin, dopamine. So each of these molecules has a function either to excite the tissue or to inhibit the tissue, the next cell, right? So that's basically how we function. And in the OT in the other types of cells, right, all of them, actually, we have a potential in the cell. So, there's a charge, there will always be a positive or negative charge, right, one inside, in a way, there's actually a difference in potential between the two, spaces, let's put it that way. And this is determined by the ions and the difference in electrons. Why am I bringing this up? Because when we talk about MDPL, talk about light, we're talking about electromagnetic waves and we're talking about providing, for example, energy for an electric jump.
Yes.
So why do we talk about cellular electric charge? That's why, because there is, the supply of energy in some way, right, through something, which in this case is magnetism, density, pressure, and light. It's this set of forces, these fundamentals of nature, that make it possible to create these changes at the molecular level, at the cellular level, So, in the mitochondria, specifically, right, when we talk about the mitochondria itself, it's such a wonderful, incredibly precious organelle, and
It's our energy center, isn't it? It's what produces our energy, right?
exactly, that's what I was going to say. The production of energy is done by mitochondria, right? Through the process of cellular respiration, which happens, it's a process that takes place in 3 stages, right? I'm not going to explain them because they're way too detailed, but what happens is the transfer of electrons from one molecule to another, until at the end of the reaction we get ATP, which is what we call energy. It produces our energy in the form of ATP, and the electrons, they move from one thing to another, until they become water. Why? What does the mitochondria do? It reduces the oxidation in the body. So, in the end, it tries to turn things into something neutral, let's say, in terms of charges. Which is water, right? That's one of the things. It also regulates our heat production and it also leaves us a genetic inheritance, right? We have mitochondrial DNA. And what we know today, well, we already had this information, but science is also talking about it now, is that this DNA comes from, it's a maternal inheritance, everyone has this from their mother, and it all converges to a single woman, a single original DNA, right, from creation, like a mother of the flock, so to speak.
That's it.
You get it? So, the mitochondria are involved in this whole issue of cellular repair. Why is that? Because they're involved in reducing oxidation in the body, right? And they're also involved in the process of cellular apoptosis. What does that mean? It means cell death. So, why do we need to take such good care of our mitochondria, right? Because it's connected to keeping us healthy and preventing our death, in general terms, let's say. Because the mitochondria they're there, ready for cellular stress and DNA damage. So, there are codes in the mitochondrial DNA and in the nuclear DNA that communicate with each other. And then, when the cell nucleus sees that there's some DNA damage, what happens? It'll say, hey mitochondria, start producing stuff. We need to fix things here. It's not looking good. You get it? And actually, we've even talked about it before. Our friends have mentioned that we've had a change in that P53 protein, which is related to this. It's related like this. Whoa, something's wrong. Let's release this. Let's try to fix the mess. And when it doesn't work, when this protein fails, it triggers apoptosis, which is cell death. So everything is really connected, If we really look at the whole process, we can see all the connections, right? That's why it's important for us to take care of our diet, right? To pay attention to amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, because our whole body needs that. The cell needs all of that as a whole, right? And to help our own system, we have this repair mechanism to prolong life. But what do? We mess up. Well, not us, right? Our amazing system.
Exactly. The system out there, the chaos, it leads us to, doesn't it? To pollute our bodies, tons of toxins, all that wonderful overeating, right?
Processed food. You can't even call that stuff food. So, we're really well programmed, right? The plan is amazing, right, Felipe?
It even gets in the way a lot with MDPLs, because there are a lot of people who say, oh, but I do MDPL, and I don't know. I'm not really feeling much of a difference. Very little. But then you look at the person's diet. Tons of toxins, way overweight. The cellular electric charge doesn't circulate as much. The absorption of MDPL during the activity is limited. Absorption is closely linked to your toxin percentage, your body fat percentage, even let's say, your lean mass percentage, your muscle mass. It jumps quickly, doesn't it? Yeah, the cellular electric jump is faster, right?
Yeah, fat is an insulator, right? So, how are you going to absorb something in an insulating material, right? Let's put it that way. So, it's not like everyone needs to freak out, but it's something we need to think about. We need to act on it, right? Because there's no way around it. It's a combination of things, So, when we talk about MDPL, we're talking about the beginning of the process, about the acceleration of protons and electrons at the start of our process of prolonging life, right? We're in a more accelerated state. Actually, I was just looking into this the other day, when we talk about a transmutative process, right? Of turning one thing into another, There are studies, they're doing studies. I can't remember which university right now. Anyway, I can look up the study later about gold atoms. So they accelerated and then collided the gold atoms to be able to transmute them into another material, So it's kind of like turning that, into matter, right? And then now, the process we want is actually the opposite, to become more accelerated. So, if it's possible, if science today is doing this, reproducing this, we can do the reverse process, right?
With the help of our partners, whose technology is billions of years, billions with a B, folks, ahead of ours, right? So, but nothing is like a magic wand. That's something I like to emphasize here on the channel, People think, oh, these beings have monstrous technology. Everything is just a magic trick. That's not it, folks. Our bodies can't handle it. There's no point in cranking MDPL up to 1000%, let's say, to speed things up if our bodies can't keep up, right?
Exactly. It's just like throughout the whole process at Dakila, we can see that clearly, right? So both with Like with information, we receive information like little puzzle pieces because we knew to get the information we're actually able to understand. Just like with NDPL, too, how could they give us a technology that our bodies can't handle, right? It's gradual, a journey. How long since Dakila, not talking Dakila, technologies? Since 97, 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so that draft Mari mentioned about MDPL at the beginning, what was that? It was a calibration that the beings were doing, right? Because there were people of all ages there, right? Even little Rafa.
Exactly.
Cilio must have been what? 4 years old, I think, something like that. And what happened? It was a calibration they were doing, right? We were guinea pigs, right? We were guinea pigs for this kind of calibration, exactly because our bodies can't handle it. We have all these limitations because of our lifestyle, the way this chaotic system is. That's just how it is, right?
Exactly. And that's it, right? Like we deal with energy, right? So things change too. So we need to go through the processes so they can be adapted and reorganized, right? Anyway, that's how it works at Dakila, right? And actually, I was looking, searching, right, when we were at MDPL, because, in fact, that photo I sent you, the one from the beginning there, was from before 2011, because in 2011, we really had the first MDPL already in this team format, being out in the field, involving several members. In fact, that day, Felipe, it was Mateus Lim, right, in a field activity in Minas Gerais.
Minas Gerais, near Belo Horizonte.
So we had, in the space, right, where we do field activities there, there are some fields that are football fields that are like that in front of the space, and there was one at the back there. Take a trail and go out to this other field there. And then we started calling. I think that was also kind of a first experiment, because on the first day they said, let's call so-and-so, 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 and they didn't call everyone there to play, Then on the second day, the last one, there was already that huge group, and I'll even send you the photo so you can put it here of our first MDPL.
Great. I'll put it here to illustrate.
That's it. And something I was curious about, especially after what happened at the last activity, well, actually the one before last, in July, which I'll talk about in a bit, is that since that very first NDPL, our main advisor, our president, he really played with our emotions, That's something that's always closely tied to everything that happens at MDPL. And in that first game, we split up into teams. There were no vests, nothing. I don't even know how we identified ourselves. There was just chaos. And then he made a deal with 3 people. I remember. Well, I remember the name of one, but the other 2 I can't recall anymore. And he made a deal with them, without anyone knowing, for them to mess things up, to pull shirts, kick the ball out, push people around, just to try to stress everyone out and get them as irritated as possible, So on the first day, we saw all that and said, guys, this can't be real, right? What's going on with these people? All right. Then on the second day, it got worse. It just kept getting worse, And in the end, he said it had all been on purpose, that it was to mess with our emotions, which we know, right? And that's when you see the importance of emotions too, right? Our fuel to get things done, to generate the necessary frequencies to reach a level, the level we need, at the moment when we're working on that activity, whatever it is, right? So that was it. That first activity with that game, it kept happening in field activities, right? And that's already telling the story of how our NDPL started, and we didn't even know it was called NDPL, right? At first, when we found out there was technology involved and everything, we actually used to call it MDP. Then the explanation came, right? Since everything comes little by little, right? The explanation about MDPL came, And then it started to take shape. Things started coming together and the activities started happening until one of our friends, who's really creative, challenged Charles, who's also one of the mentors, and our main mentor, Rander, to have a duel. Yeah, a duel just between the two of them on the field, each on one side, plus two goalkeepers. They could each choose a goalkeeper. And where did this happen? In Mateus Lamy again. This was already in 2015. Look how much time has passed, right? And then, I remember that by then I was already going through more intense training, working more closely with the coordination team too, working with the coordination team. I don't really remember how this request came about, but it was like, hey, you need to organize the NDPL, right? There was someone organizing the ceremony, making sure everything looked nice, and I had to come up with the game rules. So I said, oh my God, what now, right? So I've always been a sports lover. I love sports. So I was involved in every game there was at school, I did martial arts for many years anyway. I said, well, let's figure this thing out, right? We're going to have to solve this here. Guidance is guidance, right, Felipe?
But it would also be good for you to explain why all of this, right? What's interesting about why the rules were changed? Because, from the excitement in the first game, our president asked, hey, pull the shirt. Doing these setups, the reason for soccer, I think it's for people to understand, more or less, all these, because a lot of rules were changed.
Yeah.
Two-ball soccer.
Yeah.
Couple soccer, holding hands. You couldn't let go of each other's hand. So it's classic soccer as we know it, but the rules were also changed, right? It's important for us to understand, more or less, right?
Yes. So it was exactly in that match that we started having to think about this, because we had to do something different. There was a purpose, right? After stories that had already happened. And for us to bring back that frequency again, right, which is tied to the question of the kingdoms, I don't know if you are ready.
Yes. The kingdoms were 7 kingdoms that existed in the antediluvian period before the last flood. There were countless floods. The last flood, known as Noah's flood, right? The one with the ark, right? Before the flood, there were 7 kingdoms that were connected to the 49 races. And it's a bit of a long story. I've already touched on it here in a few situations. But we're always trying to recover these ancient knowledges, these very old technologies, right? Precisely to reintroduce this lost knowledge with the help of our partners from the 49 races, who were the ones that taught this back then. So they're kind of helping to bring this valuable knowledge back into circulation.
Exactly. Yeah, the NDPL, it started internally, right? This process I'm talking about happened internally, but already, talking about the past, right? To understand the history, how it happens so that we can, understand the future as well. That's when we started to learn a little bit about the story behind the NDPL, why we were going to need it. And then they would say, through the NDPL, you will pass on knowledge to the population. And we were like, huh? And then, right? What do you mean? But we just go along with it, right, Felipe? Today I can understand and see everything they talked about back then, because that's when they said, look, you're going to have to share knowledge with the community. That's how you'll be able to spread the idea of prosperity, benefits, and enriched foods. So we were like, all right, let's see how this is going to play out, right? And then that's exactly what happened. That's when I said, wow, we really need to organize this thing. There had to be a referee trio, right? With different rules, it's a different setup. It's a soccer game. Why is it soccer, right? It could be anything else. It really could. But football is a universal sport.
That.
Any country, any small town, village you go to in the world, if you talk about football, everyone will understand. So it's a universal language. So that's how it was. It started there. So I turned, right, to another person, another girl who was there in training together, right? And then I said, so how are we going to do this? Let's check out these rules, right? Let's read what the official rules are. We're going to use them. 2 people on the field, opposing 2 goalkeepers. How are you supposed to play soccer on a field, right? Of course, we didn't play soccer. It wasn't on a full-sized field for 11 players, but it was still a pretty big field, a really big field. In Mateus Lamy, the field is huge. So we had to think. Then I said, as always, with time. So we had to download these CBF rules, read this thing, and find a referee trio. And we looked at each other and said, now what? We're screwed, right? There's no time. We ended up making up the rules right there, adapting them as we went. We said, let's be linesmen. Let's be referee, assistant. At least we can help out a bit. It had to be 3 women. Then we said, women, not that women don't understand soccer, but it's we aren't born with soccer in our veins, right?
It's easier for women to bring this new perspective to soccer. Bring in, invent new rules, get people out of their comfort zone. Men have been playing since they were kids, so it's all a bit more rigid, you know? We needed a feminine perspective to change all that, right?
Polarities, right, Felipe? We don't have 100% of things when we're on opposite sides of the spectrum, do we? So there would be a female refereeing trio and also the players, who were 4 men, right? So, all right. Then we just stayed there, you know. The referee today, she knows this, right? She still wants to kill me because of that, because I went up and said, ref. I think it might have been Andrea, right? It has to be someone calm, someone responsible, someone serious, neutral about things, who can be firm, you know, and who will do it wholeheartedly because they wear the Dakila jersey. So that was it, right? So I put her in that trap.
To this day, she still referees.
She got herself a commitment like that 4 years. Oh, guys. So then we created these rules, right? We had our very first duel, right? Back then, the event was called the Bailo Duel, and those games took place in Mateus Lamy. And then, of course, on the first day, Charles and Urinder left totally wiped out, each going their own way, just dead tired, really dead, even if just for a few minutes, because it was a big field, just one person, and MDPL there, just crushing it, you know?
MDPL creates this different kind of field where, if you weigh, I don't know, 80 kilos, it feels like you weigh 300 kilos. Your legs get kind of wobbly. It's like your whole body just feels heavy. That's exactly it, right? That's what brings about those benefits, isn't it? It's like putting our bodies, let's say, to the limit, right? I think it's like adjusting, right? Our metabolism, our brain waves, our brain channels. It's kind of like when you're playing sports, you know, with your heart racing, pushing your, let's say, your physical limits. What happens? They're there making adjustments. It's like an intelligent life, isn't it? That does this.
Yes, exactly. And I can tell you from my own experience, you know, when this started, well, a little after, right, when I actually started playing, being aware of the MDPL, when the percentage was already a bit higher, I have to say, at that time when it started, I was at the peak of my physical conditioning. I was doing really well. And then, like, the first 10 minutes of the game, you're just there like this, you know. It even makes your vision go a little dark, because it's like you're kind of out of breath there, right? And over time, you start getting used to it, you know, and your body starts adapting to it too, right? And I remember the feeling, like, from the first game, you know, the refereeing. So there were 3 days of games. On the first day, it was just them, right, by themselves. And since everyone was exhausted the next day, right, they let us put more people on each side.
Remember the percentage.
Yeah, 17%.
How much? Look at that, guys. 17% the first game. 2 people played dead. Then more people were added, because that way the MDPL load gets divided, right? And today we're at 500%.
510.
510%. That's crazy. Look at that progress. It's impressive.
And how much time, Felipe? So we started there, 17%, 2015 adaptation period, absorbing technology into our bodies. And I remember the feeling because I was one of the flag bearers, and I remember that I really had to put in a lot of effort, to keep my mind focused on what was happening. It was really about visual processing and absorbing the information, moving around, guys. It felt like I was in jelly or something, With that, yeah, resistance to move, difficulty sometimes even seeing what was going on. It was like everything was kind of foggy,
When I started playing, I didn't play much because, due to judo, I have a surgically repaired knee, so I can't. Well, I have to be careful with soccer. But I also felt my body was really heavy. It felt like I weighed 600 kilos. It was crazy, just so heavy. And sometimes you felt a bit confused too. You look around.
Exactly.
And you tried. It was like you were kind of out of it, Weird. It's really strange. And the physical part of MDPL, I did it by walking, doing stuff like that. Not because I don't. I've got to be careful with soccer. Seriously, right? In some of those one-on-one tussles with our dear president, he already ripped off 2 of my toenails. I said, man, I'm going to end up wrecking my knee. So I thought, well, I'd better take it easy, right? I played a little, when it was mixed teams, which happens a lot with the women. It's more chill. But even so, for me, soccer isn't really my thing. So I do other activities during MDPL.
Yeah, the recommendation is to keep moving, right? So we'd end up gathering everyone there around the field, which, by the way, is amazing nowadays, right? So we have the facilities, we have everything. We're going to show you some photos from the beginning so you can see what it was like.
Yeah, it used to be all gravel there, I remember. Actually, it was an old gravel lot, because now there's a work area called Cascalheo, but it's not the original one. The original Cascalheo is where the soccer field is now.
Exactly. So now, it's really great, right? There's bleachers.
I'll put up some drone footage here so you all can take a look, okay? Yeah, I filmed it just to give people who don't know the farm an idea of what it's like.
Yeah, really cool. Well, the first games already started out mixed, and then there was this matchup. Then they Well, they increased the team size so much so that by the end of this tournament, this match in particular, right, they were already finishing with teams of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 players. And it kept going like that, so much so that later there was the match between the mentors, right, which is a group of girls. We also had to do this one-on-one match. And let me tell you, I almost died that day. Well, also, let me tell you, it was 3 in the morning and it must have been about 10 degrees, because they put us in these, really tough situations.
It's part of the train. It's part of the training, guys, always pushing us out of our comfort zone.
Exactly. Exactly. We were in Brasilia. Brasilia is usually scorching hot, but that day we could barely see a few feet ahead because there was this fog, this horrible cold, So it's like they say, let's put them here in these conditions, let them deal with it.
Yeah, let's give them this kind of weather and see what happens.
Exactly. So, we went through a bunch of different formats, right? And even with the rules, there was a time when we had the Court of Justice involved, people who actually work with justice to help us see things more clearly. We even had our own VR, right, which was TVCH there to help with the footage, so things would be fair for both sides, Yeah, because that's what MDPL is about. It's meant to be competitive, but with nobility, right? There has to be nobility. Nobility, discernment, wisdom, That's what MDPL brings, and a vibe of joy. So, can we compete? We can. We should, of course. That's part of the game, part of the competition. I'm super competitive, so when I get on the field, it's like MDPL actually makes that feeling even sharper.
And then you get more, fired up. Let's say, more eager, with that grit, right? With that let's go attitude. Sometimes there are a few little issues, but that's all part of the training, guys.
Yeah, that's not the goal, right? We have to work on ourselves precisely for that. Come on, am I going to get on the field to steal, to cheat, to hurt a teammate? Why would I go in hard on a teammate, So, sliding tackles, it's just not a thing. We play soccer, but that's not part of it. There are no sliding tackles, Am I going to hurt someone on purpose? Sports by themselves can already cause injuries, and I'm still going to do that. So, that's not our goal. But I'll tell you, when I get on the field, when I put on that jersey, it's like I'm in the zone. And, I want to win, and I can't even hear the crowd, can't hear the announcer, I don't hear anything, I'm just there, This happens to a lot of people, right? It also brings up a bit of this issue of instinct, right? Of our primitive instincts too. It's an opportunity for us to work on that as well.
Our work, let's say, as our friend Bila says, right? You have to have a giant ego, but under control, under your foot. So pull this out so you can learn how to maneuver, right? You with that ego, let's say, in quotes.
Awesome.
That makes you, right? Have courage, have focus, have impetus, right? But always under control, without loss of control. This is part of the MDPL. It increases everything, right?
Yes, that's why I even talked about the issue of thoughts, right? Because we have to have positive thoughts at this time, always, but especially at this time, because of this, right? Even though I'm out there on the field, I'm worried if I'm going to, I don't want to hurt anyone, That's not my goal, right? That's the difference with our MDPL, with our sport, And we see this, actually, it's something we bring today, right? As we evolve today, we have, the men's and women's tequila keens.
Exactly.
They play games, with teams, actual teams, from the cities, right? Teams from outside, championships and everything. Actually, the men's team, is in a championship these days, right? There's a final, I think next Sunday, and they take part in all sorts of different championships. And that was the evolution, We started out with the duel, then it became a tri-elimination, right? And then there were several rounds of tri-elimination too. We had the cup, the Brazilian MDPL Cup, which I think lasted about 9 months, more or less, and included all the states. Until we got to the point where, like you said, we always want to have different things to do, like the couples games. We had games with 2 balls, games where you were allowed to use your hands. So sometimes you get unexpected groups for teams, right? Yeah, sometimes it's unexpected in terms of ages, mixing younger people with more experienced ones, you know?
Uh-huh. In fact, you can see the progress of the older folks who have been playing for a few years, right? MDPL here on the farm, you can see their confidence, their physical improvement.
Exactly.
It's impressive. Everyone talks about it. That's really interesting. You can actually see it in people.
That's true. Yeah, so then we got to the point. I don't remember exactly when, but maybe we can look it up later, the first caravan, right? Then we, taking MDPL, it was time, right, to take MDPL out into the world. And we started with this caravan model, which, honestly, is a really cool thing, right? We're right there, in contact with people. At Dakila, we train, and we have all this information precisely so we can share it with the world. To share it with people. And it's an excellent opportunity for us to do that, because then we bring a technology, which is MDPL, right? We interact with people there, so there's this exchange, we get the chance to talk to the people who are there, and we have the opportunity to share our benefits, which are enriched foods, right? With minerals and so on, yeah, our financial benefits. We've already introduced CP. There was the CP phase, giving out the Darados. Today it's BD. Before it was BDM in paper bills. We even handed out BDM bills, and now it's digital BDM, right folks? Which we're using now, and it's really strong, right?
And in a playful way, isn't it? Yeah, playing soccer. People really feel it firsthand.
Yes.
The technology, you feel the well-being, you feel joy, you feel all these benefits, right? I think that's something really strong in Dakila, isn't it?
Yes.
It's very much geared towards, focused on practice, on having real experiences, and that's really important. Theory, sure, to have the foundation, the basic understanding of what you're doing, but what's even more important, especially for our partners, is this experiential part. Actually trying all of this out, feeling it in your own body, that's really important.
So guys, we're here at MDPL, right? Soccer. It's usually soccer. Like when I did a little interview with Otavio Reese, right? Soccer is the perfect sport because we use our minds, you know? It's also about thinking, working our reasoning, not just our bodies. And it's a popular sport. Everyone likes it, and people of all ages play. And MDPL is buzzing. That's it, folks. And here among the crowd, the people here, right, the audience, all the members here, when we get together for MDPL, they're taking it in too. They're sitting down, but they're also absorbing that energy to a certain extent. You get it? It's always a bit of a mess. I almost got hit by the ball here, but that's it, folks. MDPL, this whole party, the frequency of joy, as our partners say, is a frequency that gets us going. Typical, right, of the Brazilian people. Really cool, everyone.
So that's it, right? We've reached this point, and today, like we said, there's the selection. We even have the Dakila selection, which is something that's now established, right? It's something that has become and continues to become a reference here in the state, in Mato Grosso do Sul. So now, the teams already know us. When we show up places, I go with the team a lot, because Gustavo is there, directly involved with the boys. So when we are live somewhere, people recognize us. They know it's the Dakila team, and they like playing against Dakila because we have a different mindset. We're not there to fight or to, you know, that ugly and annoying side of soccer, the violence and all that. That's not our goal.
And during Dakila's games, our partners send MDPL, right?
Exactly. In a smaller percentage, right? For people who,
Of course. Otherwise, the other team can't keep up.
because we're already used to it, right?
That's actually happened before, hasn't it? Our president even said, look, let's play with the guest team MDPL. In the first, I think it was in the first half, no MDPL, and in the second half, the beings would put in the MDPL without us saying anything, just to see how it goes, So you can see in practice what the difference is.
Yeah. And in the beginning, I remember, because I took part in games like that, And there were days when sometimes we didn't even know there had been an increase in the MDPL, right? I don't know, it was 210, and suddenly, on that trip, it was 270, and we had no idea. And we'd get on the field and say, oh my god, what's going on, Obviously, it's already really hot, which doesn't help, right? But we'd go out there and say, guys, what is going on? I can't cook it. Then we find out that there was a spike in the MDPL just hitting us, So we were struggling to play. Just, oh my god. And it's the NDPL, right? That's the power of the NDPL.
Exactly. This too, folks, is a very important tool. It's a gift from our partners to prepare us, to prepare our bodies, not just to reach that acceleration of brain activity, electrical surges, cellular jumps, all those physical benefits that Mari described here, right? But also, why? Because we're living through a moment of transition between modulating waves.
Exactly.
And during this transition, we're in the neutral modulating wave, already moving into the negative modulating wave. There's no connotation of, oh, it's negative, it's bad. That's not it. It's just the trajectory of the modulating wave. But what happens then? In this transition, the MDPL parameters of Earth's atmospheric cavity are changing. The magnetism, the density, the pressure, and the light are all changing. That's precisely why all these significant climate anomalies, profound seismic anomalies, and dramatic volcanic anomalies, all of that is currently happening because of this ongoing planetary transition. This is going to have a big impact on the population.
Actually, it's not going to, right, Felipe? It's already affecting us. Yeah, in fact, NDPL is also here for that, right? Because during this period of electromagnetic changes, with everything that's happening, we start to notice that people are more confused, they're more depressed, they're kind of lost. So MDPL is also here for that. It's a correction, right? This guidance is meant to help correct that and bring wisdom, bring discernment, so that we can think and make our own decisions.
Not to mention the changes in the human body, right? We're 80% water, so just imagine changing the magnetism, the density, and the pressure. That's going to lead to certain situations, right? Heart attacks, strokes, It's complicated.
It's a combo, right? It's a whole combo, like the system knows about this moment too, and everything is way more intense as well, right? When it comes to food, when it comes to subliminal messages. So it's a complete package. But they didn't count on our package too, right? So that's it.
Exactly, that's it. Because like we've been saying, right? The GO, as we call this parallel government behind the scenes, the global one that controls things, right? They know about this situation. So what happens? They load it up with acidulants, right? They go heavy on these ultra-processed foods with chemicals to affect our brains. All that stuff you know very well. And we have to be really careful talking about it. You all know about these situations from the last 3 years, right? It starts to alter us genetically. It changes our metabolism. And what happens then? With this transition, with this, let's say, change in the NDPL, the magnetism, density, pressure, and light of the Earth, it only gets worse. So, the NDPL tool is very powerful. It's been used in our training sessions with our members in several places around the world already, but now we're starting to extend it even to family members, to friends who are interested, right? We're opening it up, and there will come a time when our partners will have to send the NDPL to people's homes because this change is increasing due to the transition. As, let's say, the Earth system, as we call it, is entering the negative modulating wave, the parameters are becoming more pronounced. We don't know the parameters, but they're becoming more pronounced, and this is going to increase, right? This effect on people's bodies and their intervention will be needed, right?
Yes, and actually, you mentioned anomalies, and that reminded me of something related to this issue of anomalies, right? Of the waves. And also, when we're there at the NDPL, we have a really strong interaction with other realities, right? Physical, non-physical, and quantum. So, we were even able to capture this issue of the anomalies that the NDPL causes through photos, remember?
Exactly. I do just remember now, right? The photos missing a hand, missing a leg, those are anomalies that Mari remembered. It's really important during the NDPL, not just during the soccer game, but for anyone hosting the NDPL in their city, during the exercises, during whatever you're doing, your walk, whatever physical activity you end up doing, what happens? That perimeter where it's being projected by the biosatellites from our partners, the NDPL, what happens there? There's an interlacing between dimensions. This is also to prepare us for interactions with these dimensions, right? This is very important, really important. And this is recent information. We didn't know about it before, right?
Exactly. Actually, so what happens, right? We gave a brief explanation of what happens, which is like this. The camera is able to capture a moment very quickly, sometimes even faster than our brain can process. Our brain picks it up, but we don't have that quickness to actually see it. And what happens there is actually a quantum leap, because you think you project the thought, and sometimes your body hasn't caught up yet. So that's why there's this displacement in the image, sometimes.
It's a space-time displacement, right?
Exactly. That's why there's the whole issue of anomalies, modulating waves, and interaction with other realities. So it would be cool for us to show some photos to everyone later.
Let's illustrate this with some photos I have
Yes,
of this whole situation so you can see what it's like.
exactly. Well, I think that's it. Felipe, I think we managed to give a little overview, of the history of NDPL, right? It's been many years of experience of living through it, so let's make the most of it, right?
Let's show some examples to everyone because there are so many people now. A lot of new folks are arriving in Dhaka, lots of newcomers. So, since Mari is a real veteran and was involved in all of this, right, she took part in the whole thing. I wasn't as involved, not really, but since Mari was so deep into it, I thought, hey, I'll bring Mari in to talk about this, but I'll bring her back so we can touch on this topic again. Maybe I'll even bring her husband along. He likes it too, and we can have a little round table and talk about this health topic, right? Very interesting. The couple are top-notch researchers. Mari, with her background as a pharmacist, is fantastic. We learned so much from her.
That's the most important thing, right? Beating the test of time, right? In short, that's what it's all about, right? That's our whole focus, right?
To extend our lives, exactly, and in a healthy way, right? So with all this training, we can see down the road, right, how we improve, make that quantum leap. That's our number one, number two goal, isn't it? because there are other things too.
I just want to invite everyone to watch MDPL, to take part in MDPL when it's happening, because it's not just a little soccer game. It's not like on our trip schedule. Oh, is there going to be MDPL again? Guys, again, thank God, thank the gods. It's great that we're going to have MDPL, you know? Even if it's tough out there in the heat or whatever, right? Let's make the most of it while we have this technology, this amazing technology, this awesome gift that we have, right?
Exactly. And hey, just a reminder about the TVCH links, the TVCH channels that broadcast these MDPL games you guys can watch. It's a lot of fun. It's really funny. That's how it's supposed to be, laid back. And then you can enjoy and soak up the MDPL, maybe make some buttery popcorn, like Bila says, right? Eat together, you know, everyone hanging out, and it helps you absorb this luminous frequency that's so important for us. Mari, so thanking you again. Any final thoughts?
I'm the one who should thank you for the opportunity, right, for us to be here together, to be able to share a bit of knowledge, you know, to pass on a little of our experience to people. I'm really grateful for the invitation. Thank you so much.
So, thanks again. Everyone, see you next time. Let's keep going, seeking knowledge, building our intellectual and mental strength. Folks, take care.